David sat in the busy airport waiting area, watching his 8-year-old son Tommy bounce excitedly in the chair next to him. The boy couldn't stop talking about flying in first class for the very first time. David smiled, but felt his stomach twist with worry. Those tickets had cost him almost 3 months of overtime pay from his construction job. "Dad, do you think they'll have those fancy cookies on the plane?" Tommy asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "And the big seats that turn into beds?" "I hope so, buddy," David replied, ruffling his son's hair. "This is our special trip, remember? Just you and me going to see Grandma." The airport was packed with frustrated travelers. Flight 447 to Seattle had already been delayed for 2 hours because of some problem with the plane. David checked his phone again. His mother was waiting for them in the hospital. She had been sick for weeks, and this might be his last chance to see her. He had saved every penny he could to make this trip special for Tommy, who barely remembered his grandmother. David looked around the gate area. Business people typed angrily on their laptops. Families with crying babies tried to keep their children calm. Everyone seemed stressed and tired. The airline workers behind the counter looked just as frustrated as the passengers. That's when David noticed them. 2 little girls, maybe 10 years old, sitting by themselves near the big windows. They looked exactly alike, twins with neat braids and matching blue dresses. Unlike everyone else in the airport, they seemed calm and quiet. They had small rolling suitcases beside them and were reading books. Something about seeing those girls alone bothered David. Where were their parents? Why weren't they worried or crying like most kids would be in a busy airport? They looked well cared for with nice clothes and expensive-looking backpacks, but they kept looking around like they were searching for someone. "Attention passengers on Flight 447, came a voice over the speaker. "We need volunteers to give up their seats. We're offering travel vouchers for future flights. We especially need first-class passengers to help us out because we have a family emergency situation." David's heart sank. He had heard these announcements before. Airlines would bump people off flights when they sold too many tickets. He prayed they wouldn't ask him to give up his and Tommy's seats. This trip meant everything to them. The gate agent, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, kept making announcements. More and more people were getting upset. Some were shouting about missing important meetings. Others were worried about missing connecting flights. The whole gate area felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Tommy tugged on David's sleeve. "Dad, what's happening? Are we still going to see Grandma?" "Don't worry, son. We'll get there," David said, though he wasn't sure himself. He watched as the gate agent tried to calm down angry passengers. She explained that 2 other flights had been canceled because of bad weather in Chicago. All those passengers needed to get on other planes, and Flight 447 was one of the few still flying to Seattle that day. David noticed the twin girls again. They had put down their books and were whispering to each other. One of them looked worried now. The other was trying to comfort her sister. It reminded David of how he and Tommy took care of each other after Tommy's mom left them 3 years ago. A well-dressed man in an expensive suit was arguing loudly with another gate agent. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted. "I have a very important meeting in Seattle. I cannot fly in coach." David shook his head. He had worked construction long enough to know that treating people badly never solved anything. His own boss had taught him that respect costs nothing but means everything. The minutes ticked by slowly. David checked his watch. If this flight got delayed much longer, they might not make it to the hospital before visiting hours ended. His mother was expecting them. He had promised her on the phone that they were coming. Tommy had fallen asleep against David's shoulder, still clutching a small toy airplane. David had bought it for him at the gift shop, even though money was tight. Seeing his son's peaceful face made David remember why this trip was so important. Tommy deserved to have good memories, especially after everything they had been through. The twin girls were talking to each other again. David could see one of them pointing at something on her phone. They both looked concerned now. Whatever they were discussing seemed serious for kids their age. "Final boarding call for volunteers," the gate agent announced. "We really need first class Passengers to help us accommodate an unaccompanied minor situation. These are children traveling alone, and airline policy requires specific seating arrangements for their safety. David's construction worker instincts kicked in. He had always been the guy who helped when someone was in trouble. Whether it was staying late to help a coworker finish a job or giving his lunch to someone who forgot theirs, David believed in looking out for others. He looked at Tommy, still sleeping peacefully, dreaming probably about their first-class adventure. Then he looked at the twin girls, who seemed to need help. David felt his heart pulling him in two directions. The gate area was getting more crowded and chaotic. More delayed passengers were arriving from other gates. The airline staff looked overwhelmed. Something told David that this was going to be one of those moments that would change everything, though he had no idea just how much. David gently shook Tommy awake as the boarding announcement echoed through the gate area. His son rubbed his sleepy eyes and smiled up at him. "Is it time, Dad? Are we really going to sit in first class now?" David's heart felt heavy as he watched Tommy's excitement. The boy had been talking about this flight for weeks. He had even drawn pictures of the big airplane seats and showed them to his friends at school. The gate agent was now calling for passengers to board, but she looked stressed. David saw her talking quietly with two flight attendants who had just arrived. They kept glancing over at the twin girls who were now standing with their small suitcases. Something inside David told him to walk over to the gate counter. Maybe it was his father's voice in his head, always telling him to help others when he could. Maybe it was just knowing what it felt like to be alone and scared. "Excuse me," David said to the gate agent. Her name tag read, Lisa. She looked up at him with tired but kind eyes. "Yes, sir. Are you ready to board?" I couldn't help but notice those two little girls over there. Are they the ones who need the special seating? Lisa looked surprised. Most passengers were complaining about delays, not asking about other people's problems. "Yes, they are. They're flying as unaccompanied minors, which means they need to sit together in first class according to our safety rules. But we don't have two seats together anywhere except—" She stopped and looked at David's boarding passes. "Except where my son and I are sitting," David finished for her. Lisa nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, sir. I know this is really difficult. We're trying to find another solution, but with all the canceled flights today." David looked back at Tommy, who was now standing with his little backpack, ready for their big adventure. Then he looked at the twin girls. One of them was trying not to cry while the other held her hand tightly. "How old are they?" David asked. 10 years old. They're flying alone to meet their mother in Seattle. This is actually their first time flying without a grown-up." Lisa's voice was gentle. "I can see you're traveling with your son. I know this probably ruins your plans." David thought about all those extra hours he had worked, all the times he had skipped lunch to save money, all the planning that had gone into making this trip special for Tommy. But then he thought about his own mother, lying in that hospital bed, waiting to see her grandson. She had always taught him that kindness was more important than comfort. "What kind of vouchers are you offering?" David asked. Lisa's eyes widened. Are you thinking about giving up your seats?" "Maybe. Depends on what you can do for us." "Well, we can give you vouchers for future flights worth double what you paid, and we can put you in the best available seats in coach. I can also make sure you get priority boarding on your next flight." David walked back to Tommy, who was watching the airplanes through the big windows. "Hey, buddy, come here for a minute." Tommy ran over, his toy airplane still in his hand. "Tommy, you see those two girls over there? They need to sit together on this plane, and the only seats available are the ones we were going to sit in." Tommy looked confused. "But Dad, we saved up for those seats. You worked so many extra days." "I know, son. But sometimes doing the right thing means giving up something we want. Those girls are flying all by themselves to see their mom. They're probably scared." David knelt down to Tommy's level. "What do you think we should do?" Tommy looked at the girls, then back at his dad. David could see his son thinking hard. "Are they really scared, Dad?" "I think they might be. Flying alone for the first time can be scary, even for big kids like them." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then he walked over to the twin girls. David watched as his son started talking to them. He couldn't hear what Tommy was saying, but he saw the girls smile for the first time since he had noticed them. Tommy came, back with a serious look on his face. "Dad, they told me their names are Lily and Rose. They said they miss their mom really bad. Lily gets scared on airplanes and Rose takes care of her." David felt proud of his son for caring about strangers. "So what do you think we should do?" David asked again. Tommy took a deep breath. "I think we should let them have our seats. Grandma always says that helping people is more important than fancy things." David smiled and hugged his son. "You're absolutely right. Grandma would be very proud of you." They walked back to Lisa at the gate counter. David handed her their boarding passes. "We'd like to give our first-class seats to those two girls." Lisa looked amazed. "Are you sure? This is very generous of you." "We're sure," David said. "Just make sure they sit together and feel safe." Lisa quickly made the changes on her computer. She printed new boarding passes for David and Tommy, seats 34E and 34F, right in the middle of the back row of coach. "I wish I could do more for you," Lisa said. "This is one of the kindest things I've seen in my 15 years working for this airline." As they walked toward the boarding line, Tommy tugged on David's hand. "Dad, do you think the girls will be happy now?" "I think they will be, son. And you know what? I think we're going to be happy too. Sometimes the best feeling comes from helping others." David watched as Lily and Rose were escorted to the front of the boarding line. Rose turned around and waved at Tommy, who waved back with a big smile. "Besides," David whispered to Tommy as they got in line, "the most important thing is that we're going to see Grandma together. The seats don't matter as much as the people we're with." Tommy nodded and held his dad's hand tighter. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, buddy. More than any first-class seat in the world." David squeezed into the narrow middle seat while Tommy settled by the window in row 34. The back of the plane was packed with families, crying babies, and frustrated business travelers. The seats were cramped, and David could barely fit his long legs in the small space. But when he looked at Tommy's face pressed against the window, watching the ground crew prepare the plane, he knew they had made the right choice. "Dad, look how tiny the cars look from up here," Tommy said as the plane started moving away from the gate. "Pretty cool, isn't it?" David replied, trying to get comfortable in his seat. The man next to him was already snoring, and his elbow kept bumping into David's arm. About an hour into the flight, a friendly flight attendant with a warm smile approached their row. She was carrying a tray with drinks and snacks that looked much fancier than what other coach passengers were getting. "Excuse me, are you David and Tommy?" she asked quietly. David was surprised. "Yes, that's us. Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," she said with a big smile. "My name is Karen, and I wanted to personally thank you for what you did today. The whole crew heard about how you gave up your first-class seats for those two little girls." She handed them both premium drinks and a box of expensive chocolates. "This is just a small way to say thank you. Someone very special wanted to make sure you and your son were taken care of during the flight." "Someone special?" David asked, confused. "I don't understand." Karen winked. "Let's just say your kindness didn't go unnoticed. If you need anything at all during the flight, just press your call button. We're going to take very good care of you both." Tommy's eyes went wide when he saw the fancy snacks. "Dad, these are even better than what I thought we'd get in first class." About 30 minutes later, David was surprised to see Lily and Rose walking down the aisle toward them, followed by another flight attendant. The girls looked much happier now, and they were both smiling. "Hi, Tommy," Rose called out when she saw him. "We wanted to come say thank you to you and your dad." The flight attendant helped the girls sit in the empty seats across the aisle so they could talk more easily. "We've never flown by ourselves before," Lily admitted. "I was really scared, but those big seats up front made me feel safe. And the flight attendants gave us extra cookies and let us see the cockpit," Rose added excitedly. David was impressed by how polite and smart these girls were. They spoke like adults but still had that innocent excitement that reminded him of Tommy. Where are you girls from? David asked. We live in Denver with our grandma right now, Rose explained. Our mom has been working in Seattle for a few weeks. She's really busy with work, but she promised to take us to the Space Needle and Pike Place Market. What kind of work does your mom do? Tommy asked. The girls looked at each other and smiled. She works with airplanes, Lily said simply. She has a really important job, but we don't really understand all the business stuff. David nodded. That makes sense. I work in construction, building houses for families. It's not as exciting as working with airplanes, but I like helping people have nice homes. That's so cool, Rose said. Do you build big houses? All kinds, David replied. Big ones, small ones, apartments. The best part is seeing families move in and knowing I helped make their dream come true. The girls were fascinated by David's work. They asked him about building materials, how long it takes to build a house, and whether he ever gets to see the families who live in the homes he builds. Tommy joined the conversation, telling the girls about how his dad had taught him to use some tools and how they were building a treehouse together in their backyard. We want to finish it when we get back from seeing my grandma, Tommy explained. She's in the hospital, but Dad says she's going to get better soon. The girls' faces became serious. We hope your grandma feels better, Lily said softly. It's hard when people you love are sick. Is that why this trip was so special for you? Rose asked. David nodded. We saved up for a long time to make this trip extra special. But you know what? Meeting you girls has made it even more special than any fancy seat could have. As they talked, David noticed something strange. Every few minutes, different flight attendants would stop by to check on them. They brought fresh drinks, extra blankets, and even some magazines for Tommy to read. Other passengers in coach were looking at them curiously, wondering why they were getting such special treatment. This is weird, Dad, Tommy whispered. Why is everyone being so nice to us? I'm not sure, son. Maybe the airline always treats people this way when they give up their seats. But David had flown before, and he knew this wasn't normal. Someone was definitely making sure they were comfortable, but he couldn't figure out who or why. Rose leaned over and whispered something to her sister. Lily giggled and nodded. What's so funny? Tommy asked. Oh, nothing, Rose said with a mysterious smile. We just think you and your dad are really special people. Not many grown-ups would do what your dad did today. The girls spent another 20 minutes talking with David and Tommy before the flight attendant came to escort them back to first class. We hope we see you again, Lily said as they got up to leave. Maybe you will, Rose added with that same mysterious smile. As David watched the girls walk back to the front of the plane, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their story than they were telling. But whatever it was, he was grateful for the chance to meet them and show Tommy what kindness looked like in action. When the plane touched down in Seattle, David felt relieved. The flight had been surprisingly comfortable despite their coach seats, but he was eager to get to the hospital to see his mother. Tommy was bouncing in his seat, excited about their adventure and already planning what to tell his grandmother. Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived in Seattle. The captain's voice came over the speaker. Please remain seated while we taxi to the gate. As passengers started gathering their belongings, Karen, the flight attendant, appeared at David's row again. Mr. David, could you and Tommy please remain seated for just a few more minutes? Someone would like to meet you before you leave the plane. David looked confused. Meet us? I think there might be some mistake. We don't know anyone here. Karen smiled warmly. Trust me, there's no mistake. This is a good thing, I promise. David watched as other passengers filed off the plane. He saw Lily and Rose being escorted by a different flight attendant toward the exit. Rose turned around and gave Tommy a little wave before disappearing into the jet bridge. Dad, what's happening? Tommy asked. Are we in trouble? No, buddy. I think someone just wants to say thank you for what we did today. After most passengers had left, a woman in a professional business suit walked onto the plane. She looked important, with perfectly styled hair and an expensive-looking briefcase. Behind her was a man in a pilot's uniform with lots of stripes on his shoulders. Mr. David? The woman asked as she approached their row. I'm Patricia Williams, Customer Relations Director for this airline. Could you come with me for just a moment? David gathered their bags and followed Patricia off the plane with Tommy close beside him. As they walked through the jet bridge, David could hear excited voices ahead of them. Mommy! Mommy! We're here! David's heart skipped a beat when he recognized Lily and Rose's voices. As they entered the gate area, he saw the two girls running toward a tall, elegant woman in her late 30s. She was wearing a navy blue business suit and had the same confident posture that the girls had shown during their flight. The woman knelt down and hugged both girls tightly. My beautiful girls, I missed you so much. We missed you too, Mom, Lily said. And guess what? We met the nicest man and his son on the airplane. David stood there awkwardly, not sure why he was witnessing this family reunion. Patricia touched his arm gently. Mr. David, I'd like you to meet someone very special. The woman stood up and walked toward David with her daughters beside her. Up close, David could see she had the same kind eyes as the girls, but there was something else about her, an air of authority that made David feel like he was meeting someone important. Mr. David, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Rebecca Sterling, and these are my daughters, Lily and Rose. David shook her hand, still confused about why this meeting was happening. Patricia cleared her throat. Mr. David, Ms. Sterling is the CEO and owner of Sterling Airlines. She owns this entire airline company. David's mouth fell open. He looked at Rebecca, then at the girls, then back at Rebecca. What? I own the airline, Rebecca said with a gentle smile. This whole company belongs to me, and you, Mr. David, gave up your first-class seats for my daughters. David felt like the world was spinning. He had given up his expensive seats for the children of the woman who owned the entire airplane. No wonder they had been so calm and well-behaved. No wonder the flight attendants had treated them with such special care. I had no idea, David stammered. I just saw two little girls who needed help. That's exactly the point, Rebecca said. You helped my daughters without knowing who they were or what I could do for you. You did it simply because it was the right thing to do. Tommy tugged on David's jacket. Dad, does this mean Lily and Rose's mom owns all the airplanes? Rebecca laughed. Yes, sweetie, I own this airline and many others too. But more importantly, I'm a mom who was worried about her daughters traveling alone for the first time. The girls called me during the flight, Rebecca continued, looking at David. They told me about the kind man and his son who gave up their special seats. The flight attendants told me the whole story. I've been running this company for 10 years, and I've never heard of such selfless generosity from a passenger. David shook his head in disbelief. I just did what any parent would do. I saw kids who needed help. But that's where you're wrong, Rebecca said seriously. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. Most people would have complained about the delay, argued about keeping their expensive seats, or demanded compensation. You did the opposite. Lily and Rose ran over to Tommy. We told our mom all about you and your dad, Rose said excitedly. About how you're going to see your sick grandma and how your dad builds houses for families. And about your treehouse, Lily added. Mom, can we help them finish their treehouse? Rebecca looked at David with newfound interest. You're visiting your mother in the hospital? David nodded. She's been sick for a while. We saved up for this trip because, well, we weren't sure when we'd get another chance to see her. Rebecca's expression softened even more. And you still gave up your seats for my daughters even though this trip was so important to you. Family is everything, David said simply. Your girls needed those seats more than we did. Rebecca looked at her daughters who were chattering excitedly with Tommy about airplanes and tree houses. Then she looked back at David with an expression he couldn't quite read. Mr. David, I think you and I need to have a longer conversation, but first you need to get to the hospital to see your mother. My driver is waiting outside to take you wherever you need to go. Oh no, that's not necessary, David protested. We can take a taxi. I insist, Rebecca said firmly. It's the least I can do. Besides, I have a feeling this won't be the last time we see each other. Rebecca's black luxury car pulled up to the hospital entrance. David had never ridden in such an expensive vehicle before. The leather seats were softer than his couch at home, and there was even a small refrigerator with cold drinks. Tommy had been amazed by all the buttons and screens, but David was too nervous to enjoy any of it. "Thank you so much for the ride," David said as they got out. "This was really too kind." "Nonsense," Rebecca replied. "I'll wait here while you visit your mother. Take all the time you need." David started to protest, but Rebecca held up her hand. "My daughters told me how important this visit is to you. I'm not leaving until I know you've had proper time with your mother." Inside the hospital, David's mother was awake and waiting for them. Her face lit up when she saw Tommy running toward her bed. "Grandma," Tommy shouted, carefully hugging her thin frame. "We flew on an airplane to see you, and Dad gave away our fancy seats to help two little girls." David's mother, Helen, looked at her son with pride shining in her tired eyes. "He gave away your seats? Tell me everything." As Tommy excitedly told his grandmother about their adventure, David sat quietly beside the bed. His mother had always been his biggest supporter, especially after Tommy's mom left them. Seeing her so weak in that hospital bed made his heart ache. "You raised a good man," Helen whispered to herself, loud enough for David to hear. "I'm proud of you, son." They spent 2 hours at the hospital. Helen was stronger than David had expected, and she loved hearing about their flight adventure. She made Tommy promise to finish their treehouse and send her pictures. When they returned to the car, Rebecca was waiting with Lily and Rose. The girls had been shopping and had bought a small stuffed airplane for Tommy. "For your grandma," Rose said, handing him the gift, "so she can remember your airplane adventure." "We wanted to do something nice for you because you were so nice to us," Lily added. Rebecca watched this exchange with interest. "How is your mother doing?" she asked David gently. "Better than I expected," David replied. "Thank you again for waiting and for everything else. This has been the strangest, most wonderful day of my life." "It's about to get even more wonderful," Rebecca said with a mysterious smile. "Would you mind coming to my office tomorrow morning? I have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" David looked confused. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Trust me," Rebecca said. "But first you need a good night's sleep. I've arranged for you and Tommy to stay at the Grand Hotel downtown. Everything is taken care of." David shook his head. "Rebecca, you've already done too much. We can find a regular hotel." "Dad," Tommy whispered. "Maybe we should say yes. Lily and Rose's mom seems really nice and she wants to help us." Rebecca laughed. "Listen to your son, David. He's very smart." The next morning, David found himself in the most impressive office building he had ever seen. Rebecca's office was on the top floor, with huge windows overlooking the entire city of Seattle. Her desk was bigger than David's living room. "Sit down, please," Rebecca said, gesturing to comfortable chairs by the window. "I want to tell you a story." She poured coffee for both of them and sat across from David. "My father started this airline 30 years ago with one small plane," Rebecca began. "He taught me that business success means nothing if you don't treat people right. He always said that how you treat strangers shows who you really are." David listened quietly as Rebecca continued. "Yesterday, you showed my daughters and me what real kindness looks like. You gave up something valuable without asking for anything in return. That's exactly the kind of person I want working for my company." "Working for your company?" David's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. "I'm opening a new construction division," Rebecca explained. "We're going to build employee housing, community centers, and training facilities for our airline workers. I need someone to lead this project. Someone who understands construction and, more importantly, someone who cares about people." David stared at her in shock. "You want me to work for you?" "I want you to work with me," Rebecca corrected. "The salary would be 3 times what you're making now, plus full benefits, including the best health insurance for your mother. And Tommy could attend the private school where my daughters go." David felt dizzy. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Rebecca said gently. But David, I'm not offering you this job because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because yesterday showed me the kind of character you have. That's worth more than any college degree or fancy resume. 6 months later, David stood in his new office, looking out at the construction site where his team was building affordable homes for airline employees. Tommy was thriving in his new school and had become best friends with Lily and Rose. The girls visited Denver every few weeks, and their families had grown close. David's mother had recovered enough to move closer to them, and she loved spoiling all 3 children equally. The treehouse was finally finished, and it had become the favorite hangout spot for Tommy, Lily, and Rose. Rebecca had become not just David's boss, but a true friend to their family. She often said that David's act of kindness on that airplane had reminded her of her father's values and inspired her to make her company more focused on helping people. Every time David walked through the airline terminal now, he remembered that day when he gave up his first-class seat. He had thought he was just helping 2 little girls, but those few minutes of kindness had changed his entire life. Tommy often asked his dad about that day, and David always gave him the same answer. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you help others without thinking about what you'll get back. The first-class seat David gave up had led to a first-class life he never could have imagined.